Joining me now is Newsweek opinion editor Batya Ungar-Sarton. Batya, nice to speak to you again. Thank you for joining me. I want to start with Elon Musk's one-armed gesture that he gave during President Trump's inauguration, which the tiresome left are now claiming was a Nazi salute, when in reality he was literally saying during the speech, in that moment, "My heart goes out to you." But I've got to play you this clip of CNN. Have a look at what they said about it.
That salute was evocative of things that we have seen through history. It was quick. I think our viewers are smart and they can take a look at that, but it certainly was, it's not something that you typically see at American political rallies.
Batya, why are the Liberal media still so desperate to create false narratives? They just seem desperate for drama and controversy that simply doesn't exist.
Talk about lefties losing it. What I love about that clip is that it's clear that it has sunk into the minds of those CNN anchors that they, along with a few other outlets, have just been sued for defamation, right? They know that. And so they can't quite bring themselves to say what they're trying to imply, which is that it was a Nazi salute. So they call it a gesture that we recognize from history or some such nonsense. It's so absolutely hilarious. And you are, of course, on the money. They absolutely need to cast their political opponents as Nazis because they have nothing else. Donald Trump just won with a massive mandate to rule from the vast majority of people living in American swing states, the vast majority of the working class. He turned out to be a great uniter of people, regardless of race or region or where they worked or what they worked in, after being cast as this deplorable Hitler-like divisive character for 10 years by these exact same liberal media pundits and Democratic elites across the board. So really, we're seeing them trying once again to do what they did much more successfully in 2016. Fortunately, the American people just aren't buying it anymore.
No, they're certainly not. But CNN, gosh, they're just brainwashed. Meanwhile, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has accused the Anti-Defamation League of defending a Hail Hitler salute and claimed that the anti-Semitism watchdog group works for President Trump and his allies. Now, this comes after that group defended Elon Musk's gesture prompting this post from AOC. She said, "People can officially stop listening to you as any sort of reputable source of information now. You work for them." Oh, look, Batya, AOC is desperately grappling at straws once again.
I'm still laughing about this. Like when she said, "You work for them," it was sort of unclear. Did she mean like that the ADL works for Trump, or did she mean ADL works for like the Nazis? It was so hilarious, especially because the ADL is unbelievably woke and spent the last 20 years catering desperately to the woke left, only to have it thrown in their face from AOC. You know, a lot of people were very angry about this. I honestly have not stopped chuckling about it. It is so ridiculous and over the top. This used to be very threatening because they had this monopoly on information through the liberal media. About 96% of American journalists are liberals or progressives. And so you had this thing happen where their view that Donald Trump or the MAGA movement or anybody who likes him or votes for him is literally Hitler. You know, this is something that people used to buy, but it's so clear now when the majority of Hispanic men, 25% of Black men, 46% of Hispanics overall, you know, millions and millions of Americans who are not white, who are people of color, so many Jews. I mean, these are people who found a home in the MAGA movement because the left just has simply abandoned them to cater to these ridiculous far left extreme radical views of the left. And so now they're in this camp and they're just not going to believe that a man like Donald Trump, whose heart obviously beats for the American working class, whose singular promise is to put Americans first, they're not going to believe anymore that he's surrounded himself with Nazis. And I'll just say one more word about Elon Musk. This is a person who went to Israel after October 7th. This is a person who went on a tour of Auschwitz. This is a person who met with the families of the hostages taken by Hamas. This is a person who has been a friend to the Jews for a very long time. And I say that as perhaps one of his most vocal critics in America. I think he's very close with the Chinese Communist Party. I think he's really wrong on immigration. I'm out there criticizing him every day. The idea that this person harbors secret Nazi views is simply ridiculous. And honestly, I don't even think the people saying it believe it.
No, it's the left absolutely grappling at straws because the world has changed, America has changed, and they are still stuck in the past, I think. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump's press conference in his first full day as president. This is what he said about the January 6 pardons.
These people have already served years in prison, and they've served them viciously. It's a disgusting prison. It's been horrible. It's inhumane. It's been a terrible, terrible thing. So these people have already served a long period of time, and I made a decision to give a pardon.
Batya, he's there, explaining his decision, but in the end, he's standing firm on that. He was always going to do this.
I think from their point of view, there was a small attempt made to distinguish between people who had been convicted of violent crimes and the vast majority of people who were convicted of things like trespassing and other nonviolent crimes. About 16 of them had their sentences commuted, not pardoned. I think this was a big mistake. I think this was an obvious, easy thing to do. You hit a police officer, you touch a cop, you don't get any kind of clemency. And I think the reason that they changed tack on this, because it did seem like they were going to do what I would think would have been the right thing to do, which is only to pardon the ones who had nonviolent offenses. That's what J.D. Vance said that they were planning to do about a week ago. I think what happened was, when they saw Biden with his blanket pardons for his family, with his preemptive pardons for Fauci and the January 6th committee, which came out literally the morning of the inauguration. I think what happened was the Trump camp felt like this was such a blow to the rule of law that they had to meet that with something for their side to show what the kind of precedent Biden had started. Now, again, I don't think this was great. I think that they really should have stood fast on this. You touch a cop, no mercy. But what Trump was trying to say in that press conference was, look, before I arrived back here on the scene, the Justice Department has been weaponized. And so we can't take anything that came out of that Justice Department seriously. And so that's the decision that they ultimately made.
No, that makes sense. I do take your point on that. And I want to bring up the war in Ukraine because Donald Trump raised that in this press conference. Have a look.
We're talking to Zelensky. We're going to be talking with President Putin very soon. And we'll see how it all happens.
Now, Batya, he has previously vowed to bring peace to that conflict. How do you think Donald Trump will handle this now moving forward in trying to negotiate with both those leaders?
It's very interesting because leading up to the inauguration, I was sure that it would be much easier to get Putin and Zelensky to the table than it would Hamas and Israel. And amazingly, he managed to get Hamas and Israel to the table and has not yet succeeded with Zelensky and Putin. He did say in this press conference that he would be willing to impose sanctions on Russia if Putin doesn't come to the table soon, which to me suggested that the holdup is on the Russian end rather than the Ukrainian end. But I guess we'll see. This is something he wants very much. He could not have put a better person in charge of the Department of State than Marco Rubio. This is a person who 100% understands where Trump is coming from. He said that every single decision made by his Department of State would be made based on answering three questions. Does it make America stronger? Does it make America safer? And does it make America more prosperous? That is going to be the guiding light of Donald Trump's foreign policy through Marco Rubio. And I think this is just it's a shot across the bow to post-war world order in which America and Americans were put last. This is what America first looks like. It's not isolationist by any means, but it does ask, what are our interests here? And I think that's great.
Yeah, it's a completely new era, that's for sure. And just one more point on that press conference. Donald Trump also said he will issue an executive order to increase the availability of water in California, of course, following those disastrous wildfires. Have a listen to this.
Los Angeles has massive amounts of water available to it. All they have to do is turn the valve, and that's the valve coming back from and down from the Pacific Northwest, where millions of gallons of water a week and a day, even in many cases, pours into California. So we're demanding that they turn the valve back toward Los Angeles right now.
Batya, I thought this was quite important because we know that there were a series of failures by local authorities, by government department decisions, which led to those fires. But how contentious is water policy in California?
It is very contentious. And I will tell you, there are a lot of very wealthy people who used to have a lot of influence in the Democratic Party, whose homes just burned down, and who are going to be looking for a new political party. And honestly, if Donald Trump is going to welcome them with open arms, you could see a mass exodus of these sort of wealthy Californians, former Democrats, into the arms of the GOP.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, look, New York is one of the first sanctuary cities that the feds will target in Donald Trump's long-promised crackdown on illegal migrants. Here is how Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, he confessed that these deportations have begun. Have a listen to this.
We were expecting, based on your initial schedule, that today roundups of criminal illegal aliens in the process of deporting them would begin. That seems to have been put on hold for a little while. When can we expect that to happen? Where will it begin?
No, it started.
It has started.
ICE teams are out there as of today.
Now, Batya, this was, of course, a key election promise. This is a mandate that Donald Trump was elected on. How critical is it now for the Trump administration to deliver on this?
It's absolutely critical. This was the immigration election. Immigration in the United States, as I'm sure in other countries as well, is an economic issue when it comes to working class people. It divides the elites who consume the labor of immigrants from the working class, with whom, especially illegal immigrants, compete for jobs. And so one of the major ways in which Donald Trump unified the working class and won the election by peeling away millions of Americans who were very recently Democrats was by taking up this restrictionist policy on immigration, which, by the way, was the Democrats' position as recently as the 1990s, because whatever side is catering to the working class is going to be the side advocating for much less immigration. And controlling the border is the number one thing you do in order to do that, to limit that supply of low-wage labor, which immediately raises the wages of working class Americans. And he could not have picked a better person than Tom Homan for that job. You just look at that guy's face when he's talking about it. He cannot wait to get started on this. He is a person who all he wants to do is service the American people. And I think you see that in a lot of these picks Donald Trump has for his cabinet. These are service-oriented public servants, which is something we haven't seen for a long time.
That is a man who means business. You can tell he is right on it, right on the ball, and is going to get it done. I completely agree about the border czar. Now, this was quite interesting. Mayor Eric Adams has said that the Democratic Party has abandoned him and everyday New Yorkers, claiming that the Biden administration actually punished him for being vocal about the migrant crisis in the Big Apple. He's spoken to Tucker Carlson.
People often say, well, you don't sound like a Democrat. And, you seem to have left the party. No, the party left me, and it left working class people. Like Venezuelan gang leaders that were coming to the city, creating crimes.
And so you tell the president and his aides this, and what do they say?
Be a good Democrat, Eric.
It's quite a turnaround, because this is what he had to say about Donald Trump in the past.
Trump Republicans created this mess, and we need to fix this mess with real immigration reform.
Batya, I thought that this was quite a frank admission that he made to Tucker Carlson. In your view, what does it say really about how the Biden administration treated people who stood up against their lack of action on what are very serious key issues like this one?
It is both the case that they got very angry at Eric Adams and sidelined one of President Biden's top surrogates because he complained about immigration. And, I think what he's doing here is very clever. He's trying to take the issue that he was penalized by the Democrats over and use that to curry favor with Donald Trump. Very smart thing to do. If he's going to help Donald Trump with these deportations, that will be also a very smart thing for him to do. But, there were also some allegations against him that I think probably have a lot of merit, unfortunately. So I don't see him quite clawing his way completely out of the hole. But this is a very smart thing for him to be doing right now.
You know, that is a very, very fair point. Now, we mentioned earlier the war in Ukraine, but in terms of the Middle East, Donald Trump has said that he's not confident that Israel's ceasefire deal with Hamas will hold through in those 3 phases, saying it's not our war, it is their war. I am not confident, but I think they're very weakened on the other side. But yeah, as you alluded to earlier, Donald Trump's influence undoubtedly had an impact in this deal going ahead. But is he right in what he says there? Because I guess in the end, Israel has been forced to do a deal with the devil. So who knows what may happen?
You know, I think at this point, as ironic as this is to say, Hamas wants this deal more than Israel does. Israel wants its hostages back, but it also desperately wants to go in and finish the job that it started. Whereas Hamas, I think, realizes that they're sort of on their deathbed. I mean, there's no way they can think that they are going to keep ruling the Gaza Strip. So they want whatever leverage they can get out of this moment right now when they still have those hostages. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has promised Benjamin Netanyahu that he can go back in and finish the job. Unlike Biden, Trump did not make it a condition of the ceasefire deal that Israel promise not to re-engage militarily. So it really is Israel's decision right now. Do they want to try to get every last hostage out, or do they want to finish the war, which of course has been their sort of Sophie's choice since the beginning of this, since October 7th. Do they do everything they can to rescue the hostages, or do they prosecute the war and try to defeat their enemy? And it's a horrific, horrific decision because, of course, those are in tension with each other. And I really don't envy Netanyahu for having had to make that decision every single day since October 7th. You know, all I can say is, as Americans, we have Israel's back again now in a way that we really didn't under the Biden administration, and thank God for that.
No, you're absolutely spot on. Now, we're almost out of time, but before we let you go, I've got to talk about a final humiliation for Kamala Harris, because official Kamala Harris 2024 merchandise has been spotted selling at half price, including tote bags with a portrait of the smiling former vice president. Oh, Batya, it's all over, and now she's half price. She's on sale.
It's so depressing. And I will just say this, you know, you have a lot of Democrats sort of taking stock, trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? Here's the thing that's been bothering me so much about it. They don't actually have this sense of, well, we want to win because we want to do this for the American people. They're standing there asking themselves, well, what can we offer the American people so that we can win? It's sort of not just the death of, you know, the party as it was, but, you know, the death of the idea behind the party. I mean, what do they actually stand for? And I think in that sense, Kamala Harris was the perfect person to run because she stands for absolutely nothing, just like the party that she represented.
Oh, well, she was always a DEI pick, and look how well that went. Batya Ungar-Sarton, you're brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.